Hello and welcome to the Modesta Maiga 360 Leadership Podcast. I'm excited to be with you again today to talk about an extraordinary topic, and that is becoming a global consultant. Before we get into it, I'd like to thank Daniel Mlabwa on X, on Twitter, for his review of our podcast. He listened to the session that we had with Samuel Dandala and said, I learned a lot from this podcast. Very resourceful, 10 out of 10 recommended. Thanks, S. Dandala. That's Samuel Dandala's handle on Twitter for the great insights, and at Modesta M_M. That's my handle on Twitter for the great moderation and organization. I am thrilled that you got to listen, Daniel. Thank you for leaving a review. If you would like to leave a review, please do that wherever you listen to our podcast, whether that be Apple, Google, Spotify, YouTube, Amazon. And you can also email us on operations@modestamahiga.com to share your review of this episode that we're going to speak to Rita Mchaki. Rita Mchaki is a strategy specialist with 15 plus years of experience implementing $50 million plus private and nonprofit business and project development, resource mobilization, and communication projects in matrixed, multinational, multi-sector, and multi-stakeholder contexts. She leads with integrity and inclusion, effectively driving internal and external strategy collaboration and results. Rita is a principal management consultant at PS Management Consultants Limited, offering strategy planning, development and implementation, business development and management, strategic communication and advocacy, multi-stakeholder partnership engagement and management, and resource mobilization and program cycle management services. She's also a board and senior management team advisor. Rita holds a Master of Business Administration in Corporate Management and a Bachelor of Arts in Political Science and Public Administration. Rita Mchaki, it is such an honor to have you on the Modesta Mahiga 360 Leadership Podcast. Welcome.
Thank you, Modesta. It is my pleasure. Thank you for inviting me to this fantastic platform. I have been following it for a while, and I'm so grateful to be here. Thank you.
You're most welcome. Rita, we talk about consulting and people might know it in a single market context. For those who wonder, well, what on earth could the difference be? What is global consulting?
Well, consulting actually is, it's contract based, and it's more or less the same thing. The only difference between a national or a national context consultant and a global consultant is a global consultant is able to tap into multinational companies, international organizations, to support them to improve their operation effectiveness, efficiency, and also achieve their desired results. So the context is just, the size of the company and where the reach. So it's multinational companies and international organizations, and that is what I consider as global consulting.
Thank you so much for sharing that with us. You're saying technically you're doing more or less the same things, and I think this is going to make a lot of people, right, who are already really technically sound in what they're doing, whether they're employed or they're in their own businesses, know that they already have what it takes to consult globally.
Yes, that is correct. Because what I do is business development. And technically, effective business development requires a combination of strategy, having the right strategy, planning, and execution. So once you have this concept, you're able to support a multinational company, an international organization, and also a national company, even if it's an SME, it's a company that is a large company in-house or externally, but the concept is the same. It's just how you position it and understand the scope of that company. I mean, most multinational companies are, in the stock exchange, so they're probably in the New York Stock Exchange or the London Stock Exchange. So they really have terms and conditions in terms of compliance. So having that understanding of what kind of company that you're dealing with just puts it into context. But in terms of what you're providing, the concepts are the same.
This is so good. This is so good. And this is something, I'd like us to revisit as we're continuing with our conversation today. That, look, be at peace. You probably already have what it takes. If you know your field, where you are at the moment, that is transferable in other global markets. What you may need to know is the piece that you just shared, Rita, is the compliance. That there may be a couple of things that are specific to that company or to that market that you would need to learn, but you do not have to completely reinvent yourself to be able to consult globally. Now, Rita, for you, I'd like to know, why did you decide to become a global consultant, and when did you decide to do that?
That's a good question. I mean, I didn't decide to become a global consultant. I think it found me.
Oh, wow.
Um, yes, I believe that everything I've experienced and learned throughout my journey, not only in my professional life, but also in my personal life, has prepared me for what I am right now. I mean, I'm looking back at my upbringing and the values imparted to me by my parents.
Mm,
It's I've always considered myself as, international or global.
mhm,
Um, my education from primary, from actually from kindergarten until Form 2, I
mhm,
was doing a British curriculum.
mhm,
My parents were expatriates. We were in Eswatini, which was
mhm,
Swaziland at the time, during my primary education. And then my dad had to move for his professional work to Nairobi. And then we moved back to Tanzania in 1995. And my brothers and I moved back in 1996.
mhm,
So that is when I started, the Tanzanian system.
mhm,
So throughout my childhood, I have been international. It wasn't something that is new to me. I mean, my friends were from different nationalities. It wasn't something that was unique. I think it was just preparing me for where I'm going. And then, having said that, obviously, I have the training, the skills training. I've gone to the mentoring, coaching throughout my career. But most importantly, I think for me, is your mindset. I've always had, I'm always bold, and it's something that has been ignited in me since childhood. That I can fit anywhere,
mhm,
I can be whoever I say that I am. I just need to have the necessary skills. You just have to be mindful of the kind of environment that you are in, and you know and just be. There's nothing like shying away. I mean, my mother made me feel like I can do anything, even be an astronaut if I wanted to.
mhm,
And I guess that is the kind of attitude I have sometimes, even until today. And then, sometimes I'm like, oh my goodness, maybe this is too big, but I go for it anyway. And I think having that confidence from childhood, and the kind of skill set and the education that um, I have gone through, has prepared me for such a time like this. I mean, I've also worked for multinational corporations since graduating from university. I've worked for Millicom Tigo at the time. I worked for British Airways. I worked for Serengeti Breweries, which is a subsidiary of Diageo, which is a global drinking brand. And then I also worked for the United Nations Development Program. So I guess I was being prepared to be able to attract and fit in and be selected to work for such organizations. So that is where I really built my soft skills. That is where I got the coaching and mentoring from my supervisors, from the training that was available to me. And then I just took it all in. I just took it all in. Um, Getting that opportunity. I mean, a lot of people. I remember when I was in UNDP, there were like 10,000 online trainings that were paid for by the organization in the intranet,
wow.
and people would only tap into. My colleagues would only tap into the ones that are mandatory. There's some mandatory courses that when you start, or you have to do refresher. But
Mm,
then I always took the time to just get, when you have some free time or downtime, or just make time and just go into those trainings. And these are the kind of trainings, because these are global trainings, and
mm,
some of them are even, affiliated with with international institutions and business colleges, and they were really equipping me to be not only to to work better in that role, but also to become who I am in this kind of role that I found myself into. So in October 2019, I found myself that my assignment with UNDP has ended, and I made that decision that, you know what, I want to go into entrepreneurship, but it's not the kind of like selling products, going to China, going to India and bringing things. But then I established myself as a brand, as a product, and
Mm.
that's how I started.
Oh, Rita, there is so much to take from this. Oh my. Somebody, anyone who's listened to this podcast any length of time knows that I get excited and I get overwhelmed with the richness of insights that my guests bring. Rita, you have touched on several things, and really, not to repeat what you said, but just to echo back how key these are. You spoke of upbringing and how that matters to building confidence, um to giving a child the freedom to dream. and
Mhm.
and you spoke of mindset. I'm currently doing a course on international business strategy as part of my MBA program, and mindset is a huge uh, component of being able to thrive globally, right? As a global leader, as a global consultant. And even the skill sets that they reference things like being cosmopolitan, that's being open minded, being interested in other cultures, being interested in hearing others' viewpoints. And these are things you can get them in your current context. The world is global. You don't need to leave your country for you to get global experience or global education. You can be exposed from an early age to a global reality. And when you lean on that, which is what you said you were doing in your work, when you lean on that, after a while, you find that you have been fashioned into a global leader and a globally competitive leader, and in this case consultant. So it's what you're saying to me is it's a combination of things, but when you look at it, you probably already have the makings of it. If going into global consulting is something that you're interested in doing. So I really wanted to say that impressed on me, that it starts with exposure and the mindset that you can, and that being supported, and then leaning in. 10,000 courses, people are doing what's mandatory. You went ahead and looked at what else you might need to build out your profile over and above your job description.
Exactly. I mean, you framed it so well, Modesta. I mean, I couldn't rephrase it as you did. I mean, it's so true because, first of all, it's the foundation. And I am so blessed and fortunate that my parents gave me a fantastic foundation. I had very present family parents. They were there. I mean, especially my mother.
Mhm.
And I remember, I mean, I think she saw my talent from the get go.
Mm,
So I remember one Christmas, I think I was 9, and she bought me a children's encyclopedia.
mm.
I was furious. I wanted a doll.
Yeah. Like, ma.
But then she knew that I was so, I was so intrigued to know, to
Mhm,
know what is happening in the world and everything. And this one was really nice because it had pictures.
mhm.
And then it became one of my biggest go-to things. I mean, I loved it after that. I mean, at the beginning, I was like, an encyclopedia, really? But
Yeah.
this is Christmas. I mean, what are we doing here?
Yeah.
Then I mean, I'm so grateful that I had somebody from an early age to really nurture my skills.
Mm,
And for
mm,
me, I mean, being a consultant, another thing to say before we move into the mindset is the ability to, read and write.
mm,
I remember I've always loved reading books from the get-go.
mm,
And there's composition and comprehension. You know,
Mm,
how do you write and how have you understood what has been written?
mm,
And that is where the problem is. So if you are interested in being a consultant, you have to also be interested in reading a lot of research, a lot of writing. And I remember there was a time that, my mother decided to give me, I mean, she's always been giving me reading books. And then she decides to say, oh, by the way, have you finished reading book X? And she knows I'm a quick reader. I'm like, yeah, I've
mm,
finished. Okay, can you just write, compose what, summarize what that means? And here
mm.
she was honing my composition skills.
So good.
And I was like, oh my goodness. I mean, I've done my homework. What is
Right?
wrong with this woman? I
Wow.
didn't get it.
Yeah.
But now I do. I'm like, thank you, mama. You
Yeah.
know, so for that, when you tapped into my upbringing, I just wanted to add that in
Yeah.
so that people understand and also understand that, it's not it's a nice to have, but then you really have to put in the work. And one of the works and a task of being a consultant is doing your research, and meaning also researching your client, really understanding the dynamics, even if you're not in that country, but then
Mm,
understanding, the dynamics of that country, the politics, the economics. I've always been interested in global economics. I've always been interested in global politics, in entertainment. I remember my dad had a suspicion of the economist because he's an accountant, and
mm,
I used to, when he's finished with it, I used to just take it and read. I mean, at the time, I don't even know what I was reading, but I was
wow.
interested in taking that magazine and just reading some, even if it's one article. But
Mm,
for me, I
mm,
was just interested in to know what is happening in the world and stuff like
mm,
that. And
mm,
then another thing which is very important that you did mention is mindset,
mm,
because at the end of the day, I think we are our biggest stumbling block. You
mm,
could say maybe it's not my upbringing. I don't have the upbringing that Rita has, but then
mm,
you have an education, you have the exposure. You can
mm.
do something about it right now. It's just about, switching your mind and saying, okay, fine, what skill sets do I need so that I can be able to become this global consultant? There are a lot of lessons right now online that are accessible. But then if you don't have the mindset to invest in yourself, the mindset to say, you know what, I can do this despite my background. You are not, conformed to your upbringing, even if it has a big impact to your life. But really, you're conformed to, what the choices you make as an adult,
Yeah.
because there are some things you cannot go back to,
Mm.
but you just have to move forward. So that's where mindset is very important. I've always perceived myself as somebody who can do it. Yeah.
I love that, Rita. And I really actually wanted to get to that because I remember there's a time we had a media company, and when I would show up on radio or TV and people would say, "Well, you can speak, you've had this kind of background," and then I started putting forward my colleagues, and they'd gone through all their education at home, and they're doing amazing things, and all of a sudden, then there is nothing for them to say. You cannot then say this one had it any better than you. Clearly these are adults that had made a decision that they're moving in a certain direction, and not only were they thriving, but they were bringing millions along with them. And so thank you for touching on mindset and saying, listen, if you didn't get the kind of background that was supportive, and this could be many people's stories, you can still choose as an adult. Like, the results of your life really are up to you. So, Rita, you started already when you're talking about, if you're going to be a consultant, you're going to have to love reading, researching, writing, understanding your customer, understanding market. Could you tell me then, what does a person need to put in place if they want to start the process of becoming a global consultant?
Okay, that's an excellent question. So I did speak about having the technical skills.
Hmm.
It's like, most of these consultancy, you apply like you're applying for a job.
Hmm.
And then you have to have the necessary skill set. For me, it's business development.
Mm,
But there are other consultancy area. I mean, you can be a finance consultant, for example.
mm,
And then there's some consultancy that need international certification.
mm,
For example, if you want to do project management,
mm,
or you want to be a coach,
mm,
There's some that, it gives you an edge,
Mm-hmm.
especially for international companies. And then I also spoke about it, but I'm going to reinforce it. Be informed, be
Mm-hmm.
globally informed, understand your industry landscape, understand other industry landscape. I mean, the fact that I'm doing business development, I have worked with sector industries. So
Mm-hmm.
always be open. Don't say, okay, I'm only used to maybe working with humanitarian projects. But then if the private sector, maybe this one is oil and gas, another one it's FMG, So just be flexible, understand, the global trends, the global politics. Like right now, this is what is happening, because of for example, right now because of the Ukraine war, a lot of international nations are going through, inflation, and what that affects everything, because what is affecting a company in their headquarters, for example, if their headquarters is in New York or their headquarters in London, what is happening in Europe, it will also affect what their plan for the year. So they might need you. That will be an opportunity. For example, during COVID, there are some people that suffered. I mean, a lot of people suffered financially during COVID, but not everybody suffered financially during COVID. There was a lot of opportunities for other people that tapped into it. So being globally informed, understanding the industry landscape, understanding the economics of scales, understanding the political landscape, it will position yourself and see the opportunities, like, hey, this is where I can really reinforce. And then another thing that I'd like to really encourage is to continue learning.
Mm-hmm.
Learning never stops. Always, even if it's just a YouTube video, if you don't have time. But I would encourage people to read books. But anyway, even if it's just reading an article, a YouTube video, just always learn. Be willing to learn, even from your peers.
Mm-hmm.
you know Active listening is also a good idea. And then something that you have taught me very well is to communicate your value proposition,
Mm-hmm.
using the social media platforms. It goes a long way. Communicate that. I mean, whatever you post on your social media platforms, I like LinkedIn for my professional one.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Communicate that you are a global consultant, and
Mm-hmm.
such opportunities and such people who are decision makers will sort you out. You'll be until you say, okay, fine, at least even if you'll be invited, maybe even to apply for something. You'll be invited to write an article, things like that. It catches on that this person is what we're looking for. And then always position yourself as a solution provider.
Mm-hmm.
Always.
Mm-hmm.
That your solution provider, which is global, always
Mm-hmm.
position yourself as your solution provider. Even how you communicate, always position yourself as a solution provider.
What does that mean, Rita? Wait, what does that mean? Always position yourself as a solution provider. What what does that look like in practice?
For example, you have a post on social media
Mm-hmm.
and you're talking about a topic. So you'd start with an introduction, give it some context, but
Mm-hmm.
end with a solution that you'd
Mm-hmm.
propose. This is how I see it. That
Mm-hmm.
is presenting yourself as a solution provider. You don't leave somebody hanging. You
Mm-hmm.
give someone an aha moment. Oh, really? That is
Mm-hmm.
interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Like they want to hear more. So always end with something like, okay, this is how, this is the solution. Whether it's, read this book or give some more intel or links to a solution, whatever it is, but always end with a solution provider. And that is, I'm saying, online. But even as you meet people physically, always present yourself as a solution provider.
So good.
Yeah.
Rita, reason I'm so excited about this, and I'm going to stay on this for a while, is by its nature, consulting is saying, I'm going to come in, I'm going to come alongside you, and help you solve the problems that you have in your organization, right?
Right.
Or and until somebody knows you exist And until they know what you can do, the majority of your conversation is going to be you showcasing what you can do in person or online. As now people, maybe there's someone listening to our episode right now, and they're thinking, actually, this is something I've considered doing, either alongside my job, or quitting my job, or whatever it is. Or I've decided this is the way that I want to move forward. Well, how will people know you exist unless you're visible and value adding? And then value adding with a very specific angle. A consultant provides solutions. Make sure you're clear about who you're speaking to. And every time they're around you, they can picture you, right? As the consultant of choice, as a solution provider. And it's such a small, uh, maybe tweak, but it
Mhm.
makes all the difference. Otherwise, in a sea of people that have, the same technical competence, that have the same experience, speaking in generalities, okay, you just get identified as a professional in that area. But
Mhm.
when you're speaking in solutions,
Mhm.
then all of a sudden you're planting seeds of being a consultant, like you said earlier, making sure that you keep on speaking to a global audience, you're mentioning that it's global. Then you start introducing yourself that way, because it would be expensive to try to go to every market you want to serve,
Correct.
but it is relatively inexpensive to position on LinkedIn or to show up at business association, dinners and talks and conversations, and position yourself as a solution provider, as a global consulting solution provider. So I think that's so powerful, what you were saying there.
Yeah, thank you very much. I mean, even another way is, for example, you're here in Tanzania and you get invited maybe to um, a cocktail
Mm,
uh, at the embassy, one of the
mm,
Scandinavian embassies, or these companies. There are a lot of cocktails that are happening. There are a lot of functions that will kick off soon,
mm,
but I think in April because there's Ramadan. But anyway,
mhm,
the kind of conversations,
mm,
even if it's just talking about, a small talk,
mm,
always present yourself that you understand the global dynamics,
mm,
especially if you're going to maybe embassy A. So
mm,
you
mm,
understand the context of that country.
mm,
You understand their, what they're trying to do for your country.
mm,
They normally have, a country strategy support program.
mm,
um, then it interests them, like, oh, and then you can have, it'll just open up conversations into what you think about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and that's where you harness your solution provider. I mean, it's actually creating your value proposition.
mm, mm.
If you just think of yourself as a walking billboard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So good, so
Yeah.
good. I often joke, but it is really so true. You can, so in Swahili, when I have Swahili speaking clients, sometimes, so I switch between English and Swahili when I'm speaking to them as I consult, and I say, on LinkedIn unaweza kujipendekeza. Like,
Mm-hmm.
you're kind of showing off, and you're kind of showcasing. Um, I tell people, use it as your CV, use it as your bio, use it as your company profile.
Exactly.
The actual profile that you write out, but also what you keep on posting or reposting or sharing,
Mm-hmm.
then tells people daily the kind of solutions they can expect to get from you should they wish to engage you. It actually increases the chances that they would want to connect with you and want to engage your services, because your profile isn't static. You are every day adding so much value that
Mm-hmm.
they can imagine what it would look like if you were to do it for them. So truly, that's how I see it. Just as a job interview, or just as your CV or your bio or your company profile would give you details of who you are, what you offer, how you do it, who else you've done it for, because you can talk about, other engagements where confidentiality is not an issue. Then you're positioning daily as a global consultant, to those around you. And I cannot, of course, sing the praises of social media and LinkedIn enough. But even like you said, in live conversations and engagements, pivoted back. Rita, you keep on saying something. You keep
Mm-hmm.
on talking about understand the geopolitical context, understand the markets, understand, country specific information, understand, global trends, or the prevailing issues maybe that are impacting an area. Somebody might say, you know what, I'm very, very niched. I'm very specific. I don't need to know all the rest of that. My industry or what I'm consulting in is very specific. Are they off the hook? Can they just focus on the technical area and not understand, the wider policy and regulatory, or even just the global dynamics?
Well, that's a wonderful question. The good thing is I've worked for humanitarian development projects of support,
Mm,
and before, because I'm okay. I'll give you the context of the UN. Every UN agency has its mandate,
hmm
and for years, every agency was just working on its mandate. But then, as the world is opening up, when you write a project,
mm,
you have the assumption that this is how it's going to be and whatnot. But then when you go into implementing that project, you see there are a lot of other add-ons.
mm,
So that's why the UN also formed what they call joint programs.
hmm
So they would join, say, okay, fine, in this program, that means this agency can offer this solution, that agency can offer that new solution, that agency, and these are very different. They have
mm,
different mandates. I gave that example so that I can say this,
mm,
that at the end of the day, we're not in vacuum.
mm,
Even if maybe your your sector is health, for example,
mm,
there's a health issue, but then you have to find out why this is reoccurring. Is it an economic crisis?
mm,
Is it because of poverty?
mm,
Is it because of poor eating habits?
mm,
You know what I mean? So
mm,
you cannot say, you know what, I have this niche and I'm
mm,
going to stick to it, because
mm,
at the end of the day you'll find out that things, you have to have a what they call a holistic approach
mm,
into providing a solution, even if you're not going to do, you have your part. But then when you look at things holistically, you can even tap into other, consultants that can help, tap
mm,
into partners. Maybe we need to read this, maybe we need to partner with this, with so and so, with this company.
mm,
So I like to look at things holistically and to be flexible, because at the end of the day, when you come, I gave a very good example. You want to, the solution is the goal is sustainable human development, but
mm,
then you're focusing on health. But there are so many factors that is causing this health crisis. So
mm,
if you just focus on that health crisis, and then the other factors, you're not going to achieve the sustainable human development.
mm,
So I look at it in that way. I think even in companies, uh, there must be a reason why. That's why I went in. I also made an example with the Ukraine war.
mm,
You know, there's a huge inflation right now
mm,
because of that war.
mm,
So companies maybe right now are, re looking at their budgets and
mm,
have to cut their budgets.
mm.
Maybe they wanted to expand, or they wanted to increase a department. You have to have that kind of information so that it makes sense. Why is this happening? Why are these kind of decisions being made?
Mm.
Otherwise, you will not be positioning yourself as a global solution provider.
So good. And that's what gives you the edge as well, when you can bring in a 360 solution, which kind of brings me into my next question for you. You're a senior associate for business development at Modesta Maiga LLC, and we're a
Yes.
global management consulting firm that serves clients across 6 continents. um, in this role, how do you help individuals and businesses to become globally competitive, whether it's consultants or firms? What is it that you do? And given the fact that our focus is building global leaders and businesses, how do you help them grow and scale globally?
Wow, that's a wonderful question. First of all, the reason why I joined um, Modesta Maida LLC is because it is, what I can say, global. It has clients across 6 continents. And for me, what I bring to the table is my experience and my expertise. And as I said in the beginning, I mean, with business development, effective business development requires a combination of strategy, planning, and execution.
Mm,
So, with strategy, there's a lot of research that goes into the strategy, really helping an organization define or redefine their vision, their mission, their goals, their objectives, but also understanding with strategy, you cannot just write a strategy without understanding the context in which that organization is working on.
mm,
So where are their operations? Where do they wish to expand? What are their challenges? So getting some market intelligence for them, looking at having a deep dive into their organization. So taking them through a SWOT analysis, looking at their strengths, weakness, opportunities, and threats. And it's normally good when it's coming out from somebody from the outside, helping you, you know, a- asking the right questions and helping you go through this. Because sometimes when you're in an organization for such a long time, you're like, oh, we're good. I don't know what is happening. We're good. But then if you have this, um, a global consultant who can help you, go through these steps, having the SWOT analysis, doing the market intelligence, understanding, I normally like to use SWOT analysis and a PESTEL, looking at the political
mm,
environment, the economic environment, the technological environment, the social environment,
mm,
because that also, those things also affect, if maybe even if you're a service provider or a product, you sell products, it also affects how people view you, the consumer behavior. So you
mm,
don't have that information, then you're lost.
mm,
So strategy goes through a lot. And once you have that strategy in place, okay, this is where we are. These are the shortfalls. These are the gaps. This is what we need to cause and correct. And then we go through the planning, so it can be a planning, and also with execution, there's monitoring and evaluation. So it's a process. But then understanding that industry, understanding the environment where that industry is, even understand if it's an international organization, especially, there are different dynamics to each location that they are. Maybe that they have offices in South America, they have offices in Africa. They usually segregate, and offices are very different. The East
mm.
African office can be very different from the North Africa office because of the context, but they're all in Africa. You have to have that understanding.
And Rita, honestly, what I've observed, and I am so grateful to God for you, is that understanding. Rita,
Mm-hmm.
you have such, of course, and thank you for sharing your story. Your background with enjoying reading, and I'm so grateful that Mama gave you an encyclopedia when you were 9 years old. Not instead of a doll. We love dolls too, but you reading your dad's Economist when he was done with each copy. You have continued with that, and one of the many benefits that we enjoy having you on board is your understanding, your interest, first of all, of what is happening in the globe as the world in current affairs, your
Mm-hmm.
interest, your industry specific interest, but in the context, you have an appreciation of cross-cutting issues, not just that very niche technical area. And then the greatest of all, and you see this in meetings, I always want to hear you weigh in on this, is the appreciation of the types of organizations we're dealing with, the kinds of compliance and competitive policies and strategies, the kind of systems they put in. I mean, you have honed through the public, private, international, and all the different sectors that you've worked in. You have such an acute understanding of context, of culture, of even politics and how a client would go any which way. That global understanding, that global insights have really made a difference in the way that we think about our clients, in the way that we engage with them. And even when you were going through, the basics of business development, strategy and planning and implementation, even for us as an entity, as a US based business serving global clients across 6 continents, you've helped us really look at what does that mean to serve the globe. And
Mm.
I had a conversation with our colleague Karen before we got in this conversation with you before recording this episode, and we actually had to go through every single product and every single service. Who is our client, since we're global, and
Mhm.
what is the market context, whether it's competitors, whether it's other stakeholders, and everything we need to consider for us to put our best foot forward. And we truly want to thank you for bringing those insights in. We see that helping us position better as an organization, but it's made the world of a difference in how um, we connect with clients. And so I know you may not want to toot your horn at the moment, but that understanding, that in itself is something worth paying a premium for. Understanding the context, otherwise anything you create is going to be out of place. It's going to be an investment you'll never see returns on.
Wow. Thank you so much for that. You really took my own.
No, you're welcome. You're welcome. So listen, Rita, if a member of a 360 leadership community, is thinking, I want to become a global consultant, I'd like to engage Rita, how do they access your services? Where do they start?
Wow. First off, I'm on LinkedIn as Rita M.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the best, so they can read my profile,
Mm-hmm.
engage with the kind of contents I put out there.
Mm-hmm.
And secondly, also on Modesta Maiga website, on the business development, on the products we're selling, they can book an appointment with a consultant, and I am with business development. So they're very much most welcome.
So good. Anything else, Rita, you would like to speak about becoming a global consultant? Any parting words that you'd like to share with our listeners today?
I think this, the last thing I'd like to say, it's not only for a global consultant, but for
Mm,
any professional.
mm,
I would recommend that you enjoy the journey. The way I
mm,
framed the journey, it seemed like I had a very smooth journey. It wasn't. Uh,
mm,
I didn't just find myself here, but
mm,
be appreciate whatever experience that you're going through. Appreciate your mentors, your coach, the opportunities to learn. Grab them. Grab them. If you are in an organization, you're working for an organization right now that they have a learning and development plan, get into it.
mm,
Otherwise, I also recommend invest in yourself, put some money on it, and
mm.
enjoy the journey.
So good. So good. Rita, thank you so much for making time to speak to us on how to become a global consultant. You know, in Swahili, we have this saying, kungata na kupuliza. And it kind of comes from, I know somebody else might be disgusted by this, but let me put it out there. When a rat, and people are like, what? Why are we talking about rats? Well, it's a reality that in some contexts, rats will come into the house.
Yeah.
And a rat, when they're eating at your feet, they secrete something that anesthetizes that spot, right? And they blow on it so that you don't feel it. So that while they're gnawing at you, but they're still blowing so you don't feel it. And I feel like your session today, Rita, is you've given us both a challenge on rising up, really
Wow.
to be the best we can be at our craft, but you've also given us a roadmap to know that it is possible. It is within, it is within our power, it is within our skill set, it is within our means. You mentioned a YouTube video, to better yourself. And I really think that's, you gave us some solid common sense and some great motivation as well for us to start our journey, or to hone our journey into becoming global consultants. So I want to say thank you to you, Rita.
Thank you, Modesta. I really appreciate the work that you're doing, the fact that you're so consistent, so relevant for the times, and I am happy to be a part of your team. Thank you so much.
I am so grateful. Thanks, Rita. Ladies and gentlemen of the 360 leadership community, that makes yet another phenomenal episode of the Modesta Mahiga 360 Leadership Podcast. If you haven't already, please subscribe, leave a review, and share this episode and the entire podcast with those leaders that you also want to see win in their careers, in their businesses, in their lives. Rita just shared that you can reach out to her on LinkedIn under Rita M. And if you go to the modestamahiga.com website, she's also the lead consultant under our business development page. And so you can book a session with her. If you're a leader that also wants to start your leadership development program, you want to, rather, your leadership development journey, you want to better yourself, whether it is for global opportunities, or really just to distinguish, as Rita said it earlier, your value proposition in your current industry, reach out to us about the global coaching program and we'll send you information. You can email us on operations@modestamahiga.com, or leave a comment in the review and we'll make sure to get back to you about that program as well. Have a wonderful time. Until the next time we meet on the Modesta Mahiga 360 Leadership Podcast.